down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world. Yep. You tuned in to the Savvy Radio Show. I am super excited because I get to meet someone around the coast, East Coast, Virginia. I have a wonderful guest that has been on several shows, from Breakaway Wealth, Flipping Junkie. This guy is a veteran beyond. Actually, I admire him for his tenacity, for never stopping. I'm even interviewing him while he's working, trying to do a phenomenal acquisition of one of those properties that have just been sitting vacant, doing nothing, an eyesore in the community. And Greg Dickerson, that's right, Greg Dickerson is on the Savvy Radio Show. Bang Bang is going to make his community better by taking a vacant property in Old Sears and turning around. But we'll get into that here in a minute. But I'm just excited to be talking to someone from Virginia. And so we're going to start off. Greg, welcome to the show. Thank you so much.
Hey, Stephen, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And just want to give you guys a scope of who this guy is. He's been doing this game of real estate since 1997. He started out as from rags to riches, similar story to mine, from nothing to grandioso dreams that have accomplished and fulfilled, and he gets to live that dream out. And his main thrust today, his daily life, is to help people like you and I as real estate investors. He is a coach, a consultant. So if you're stuck or unstuck, go to gregdickerson.com and just reach out to this guy. He'll take your call, 10 minutes to get you unstuck. And if you need more time than that, then he would love to walk you through a mentor program or a coaching program. But that was the smooth introduction there. So you started in 1997. How'd you get into the game in the beginning anyway? And you were like a laborer, remodeler. Tell me, give us a little background from where you came from.
Yeah, so I did not go to college. I graduated high school, went right in the military at 18. And when I got out of the military and before the military, I'm a serial entrepreneur back in the day, cutting grass, raking leaves. I mean, as a kid, fifth grader, I would knock on your door and say, hey, my name's Greg. I live down the street. I need to make some money. What do you need done? I'll do anything you need, right? So I'm an old school salesman. So grew up that way, worked a variety of jobs before the military. I like to work. I'm a hard worker. Mostly restaurants, a little bit of construction, laborer work. And then I go in the military, do my 4 years. I get out. I'm in California, where I got stationed. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia, East Coast, but I got stationed on the West Coast. And so when I got out of the military, I banged around doing some construction jobs and kind of, learned some things. And I worked in restaurants at night. Again, very hard worker. I always had two jobs. And I'm a seeker of wisdom. I just was trying to learn everything I could learn. I knew I wanted my own business. I didn't know what it was at the time. I wanted to open restaurants, but I was working in construction and restaurants. So I did a lot of that. Got married in 1990, and I was working in a restaurant at night. I was doing construction during the day. And then I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is a summer resort area off the coast of North Carolina, big beach houses, rental houses, not a lot of hotels. And I went there and moved there to open a restaurant. That's what I wanted to do. And again, I started with nothing, had no money, didn't know how I was going to open a restaurant. I just moved there, got a job working in a restaurant the first season, and figured I'd figure it out, down the road at some point. I knew how to run restaurants. I knew a little bit about construction. And I bought a house, and I was trying to get something done on it and, an addition built, and nobody would call me back. So everybody was busy. So, I started talking to my neighbors. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, hey, man, it's so busy right now. Now, this is 1997, 98. And they're like, everybody is so busy, they can't even return phone calls. And I said, well, where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So I had some mild skills. I could build little decks and fences, and, I could do odd jobs. So I started this company and started doing handyman remodeling work. It was just me, my truck, my tools. My first year in business, 97, 98, I did $250,000 in sales. 7 years later, I was one of the largest builder developers down there. I was doing $30 million a year. And I started 12 other companies along the way during that 7-year period. Sold it at the peak, 2004, 2005, sold everything off. All the companies I'd built up, I'd sold off. A lot of them are still there, still active. And then, after that, I kind of, did more of the development side, started another building company, 2007, built that up until 2009, had to close that, obviously, because, everybody who was in building in my area, you just were out of business in 2009. There was no work. And then I switched to the developer model after 2009, and that's kind of what I've been doing ever since, where I hire builders to work for me. I no longer self-perform, and I don't have 20 employees and $1 million overhead and all that. So that's kind of the short story of the evolution of where I come from and how I did it. And again, I started from nothing with nothing, and I've done everything from, starting from remodeling, flipping lots, flipping houses, building spec houses, going into commercial development, land development, subdivision development. So I've done pretty much every asset class other than a hotel. I haven't built a hotel from the ground up. I've remodeled them, and I've torn them down and redeveloped the sites. So I'm working on a couple of hotel development projects just because it interests me and I like the business model. And, so that's what I'm working on right now is 2 or 3 of those and things like that.
Well, very impressive. The first question that came out of my mind was, what drives you? How do you keep this level of intensity?
Adult ADD.
Well, I don't know.
One way to describe it, but no, I just
like for me, I didn't want to be poor. My mom struggled her whole life. My brother went to a foster home. I had nothing. I wanted things, not necessarily materialistic, but I was tired. But dude, you've been driving since conception.
Yeah.
How old are you?
Now I'm 51. So this all started in my, early 30s. I think I was 30 or 31 back then. I'd have to do the math, but I've always, just from day one, I've always wanted my own business. I'm a natural born entrepreneur. Are entrepreneurs made? Are they born? I don't know. I feel like I was born an entrepreneur. My dad was, he went in the Navy right out of high school as well, went in enlisted, came out an officer. So he was a hard worker, very disciplined, but he wasn't an entrepreneur. So I learned hard work, discipline, those types of things from him, learned that in the military, but I'm entrepreneurial. I did not want to stay in the military as a career. I don't want to be limited, Of course, I wanted to make money. I wanted to be successful. But what I found was more than that, what I love doing is building people. So every company that I had, every business I was involved in, and everything I do now, I'm a leader, motivator, delegator. That's what I do. Leader, delegator, motivator. I build people. And the old adage, work on your business, not in your business. My philosophy has always been you work on the people in your business so they work on the business for you. That's what a true entrepreneur does. You're a visionary, you're a leader, you're a motivator, you're a delegator. I was fortunate enough to learn that at a very early age and to learn how to outsource and leverage others. Now, it's all mindset, right? So again, I didn't go to college, but I'm very self-educated and I poured into myself constantly. I read every book Robert Kiyosaki wrote, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that whole series. Out of that was the first book I read that kind of launched my career. When I read that book, what I took away from it wasn't real estate investing, like a lot of people. What I took away from it was start businesses that generate cash flow to invest in other assets. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I started a bunch of businesses that generated cash flow so I could invest in these other deals. So I've always been self-funded. I do have some partners that'll come alongside and do some things with me once in a while, but I don't traditionally syndicate because I don't have to. People saw what I did. They would come to me and say, hey, I want to do a deal with you. For the most part, I've used my own money for all of my deals along the way because I had businesses that provided the cash flow, so I didn't need it. And, so that's what I got from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Then I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That really expanded my mind to anything is possible, right? Within reason, right? I'm not going to be a, NFL quarterback. I'm not going to, do certain things, but within the realm of my capabilities and my own ability to educate myself and take action, anything is possible. I've always kind of had that mindset, but when I read that, it really opened my mind to those things. And then, there's Think and Grow Rich, then all the stuff that Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins, and on a technical standpoint, leadership books, development books, things like that. So I'm one of those guys that when you go back, to the early and late 90s, I had the cassettes on tape that I listened to, then it was CDs, and then it was the 80 gig iPod. And I've never had music on any of that. It's always been books. Even today, my iPhone doesn't have one song. It's all books. It's all audio courses. It's all podcasts. I'm constantly pouring into myself, developing myself. And I use all of that, everything that I learn, read, know, and have experienced, and I pour that into others, and I develop them and help them become successful. So my whole goal in life is to help other people become successful, help other people build themselves. And then ultimately that all, will result in success financially, of course, if you're doing the right things. But that's just what fills me. It's just what I love to do. And it's what drives me. And It's where the energy comes from.
All right. So you're this super amped up entrepreneur. I figured this out already. Now, how in the world did you get through the military? Because you're told what to do, where to go, how to eat, when to eat. what kept you sane getting through the military? What techniques did you use back then?
Yeah. So I hated that. And that's what I did not like about it. And I knew that going into it. So my dad prepared me well. I knew what the military was all about. I grew up in it. He was that way. Right. So it was very disciplined and, very orderly fashion that I grew up in. Everything was systemized, disciplined. We had a plan for everything. So I just knew that that's what it was. My mindset was, I'm going to serve my country. I'm going to do my time. It was a rite of passage in my family. Every male in my family were all military, going back to, my grandfather was a Pearl Harbor survivor, right? So
Wow.
It's just something I had to do. So I did my time, kind of like college. I did my time. I got out and learned everything I could along the way. But I was in the Navy and I traveled all over the world. So for me, it was, it was a cruise / job.
Okay.
I got paid to travel the world. So that made it kind of fun. And I knew I wasn't going to make a career of it, so I wasn't worried about the limitations. What I didn't like about it was the politics and the bureaucracy and the fact that somebody could control your career with the stroke of a pen.
Sure.
That I didn't like about it. No matter how hard you work in the military, you're only going to advance so fast. And my dad advanced very quickly, but it just wasn't for me. I love the military. Don't get me wrong. But I'm an entrepreneur.
Sure.
That just wasn't the path that I.
No,
take. Yeah.
I was just curious. Okay, so now, I want to speak for you, but to me, you seem like you like challenges. Like,
Yes.
You accepted the challenge of the Navy because it was a family thing. I had a similar deal. I wanted to go to have some kind of a springboard. What decisions, how do you make your decisions now to tackle like this Sears opportunity that you have, this vacant building? What motivates you? Like you mentioned a hotel, which I have friends have done hotels and they bombed miserably. I've had friends that have done very well in building development, done well. Some haven't done well, spec houses. What drives you today, and why are you continuing to try new things? Is it your blood of entrepreneur, or is it a challenge, or how do you calculate your next investment?
So I'm a developer. I'm opportunistic. So I look for opportunities to create value. I'm a visionary. And I'm creative. So I'm a creative, type. Now, mindset is huge. Okay. So the biggest part of it, and I know a lot of people talk about mindset, and I'm not talking about, manifestation and all that. I'm just talking about a positive can-do mindset. And there's a lot of that in the military that gets instilled in you. Before the military, I didn't even think about this. So I'm a martial artist. I grew up as a young kid in martial arts. Martial arts is all about discipline, mastering mind over body, things like that. So a lot of it came from that, but I'm just one of those people that I'm a optimist. I believe that anything is possible. I believe if you put your mind to it, if you're educated and prudent and you are experienced and know what you're doing, that you can accomplish your goals. So nothing scares me. Development is risky, but if you know what you're doing, you can hedge a lot of that risk. What you can't control is all the outside things. But at the end of the day, I'm a risk taker. I don't mind losing it all. And I went through it in 2009, just like everybody else. I didn't go bankrupt or anything like that, but I lost net worth in all of my real estate, just like everybody else. I mean, we were all doing what we did. Everything was worth X, I had net worth of $10 million at the time one day. The next day it was gone, in properties. I had, equity, in properties that I didn't do anything. It just changed. And then the area I was in, there was no business to be had from a building perspective. So I had to reinvent. Thank goodness I had a real estate license as well, and I could do other things, and I knew how to develop. But a lot of my friends, they lost everything, and we all got put out of business. So I'm not afraid to lose it all. It doesn't bother me, right? I have a strong faith. You and I talked about faith a little bit. At the end of the day, this life is temporary. We're only here for a short time. You can't take anything with you. So I am not afraid to put it all on the line in a prudent, orderly, disciplined way that I, thoroughly do my due diligence. I know this project's going to work. I've thought about all the downsides. And by the way, I've learned all those downsides the hard way. I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and that was my next question. My next question, I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah.
I got so many, about 100 questions. So
yeah, I'm here.
We're definitely going to have you back on the show, but how do you handle failure now? I mean, you shoot for the stars. And then, people that have 10 million and lose 10 million, they usually have a suicidal thoughts. Like,
right.
How do you handle failure, and are you still failing?
Yeah. I mean, not everything you do works the way you want it to work. In this game of development, a lot of times it takes longer than you think. You make less than you think. And it costs more than you think. I mean, it's just the nature of the business. So you take the ups and the downs, and it's, I'm just wired that way. Stuff just doesn't rattle me. It doesn't bother me. I'm very competitive. I like a challenge. I'm not afraid to take things on and take action. I mean, I'm a can-do guy. You put it in front of me, I'm going to do it. You know, I'll figure it out. And I will surround myself with people that are smarter and better than me, and I learn from them, and I let them do their job. So I build my confidence through others. So the way I built my company so fast was I'd never built a house before I built a house. Never, not once. I hired somebody from one of my top competitors to come work for me that had been building houses for 20 years. And then I put them to work and let them do their thing. And I learned from them. I learned from my subs, my employees, and all that. So I hedge risk and I hedge lack of experience through them. But this is we are human living, imperfect people living in an imperfect world trying to create perfect outcomes, right? It just ain't going to happen. So you just got to realize that things are going to happen. You're going to make some money. You're going to lose some money. So at the end of the day, hopefully you lose less than you make. Warren Buffett says, never lose money. I mean, he's had some bets that haven't worked out as well, but you just take the good with the bad and hopefully you win more than you lose. The key is you got to learn from those losses, learn from those mistakes. You're going to mess up. You're going to have failures. Failure doesn't define who you are, and it doesn't define where you're going, but it certainly can be a launching pad to take you exponentially where you think you're going to go.
Okay. So how do you approach deals now? You're in your car right now.
Yeah.
And you're in front of this is it a vacant old mall? Is that right?
It's a piece of a mall that's vacant, and it had a Sears in it that went out of business. And so you got the Sears store, which is huge. And then you have there's an automotive repair shop that Sears had that's kind of there. So
hold on, wait, let me give you the question. How do you approach deals? Like you see the opportunity because you're opportunist, right?
Right.
You mentioned that. What goes through your mind? Like, do you start figuring out where to get funding? Do you start writing out what my expenses are going to cost? What's my ROI? Walk us through the process of this deal or any deal that comes to your mind and what's your train of thinking?
So that's a great question. So I don't even think about money. I don't think about financing money, none of that from the beginning. It's a vision. So the first thing I do when I look at a property is what can this become? Just like an individual, just like a business. When I look at property, and I buy companies as well and businesses and do that. So when I look at a business or a property or anything like that, I look at what is the full potential? What can this be? That's what drives me. What drives me is the creative challenge of taking nothing and making something out of it, or taking something and making something great out of it. That's what drives me, whether that's a business, a property, or people. So I start with that. I start with the end in mind, the vision of what this can become. Then I add everything else to it and work it backwards. So if I'm looking at a piece of property that I think can be a hotel, right? I look at what are the drivers, what's around it, or is it rooftops, is it commercial, what's going to drive traffic to a hotel? So you got to look at those things to determine, is this a great site for a hotel? So once you determine, the drivers are there, the metrics are there, and you do your homework, you look at the ADRs in the area, you look at, other hotels in the area, you look at, things that are going to drive that traffic and all the metrics around it. You do your homework, and then you determine, what's it going to cost to develop it. And then you just, you do the math and work the numbers. If it's an apartment building, same thing. You look at, average rents in the area, what's your competition, what are the vacancy rates, what are the cap rates, what can you do with the property? And then, you just work it all backwards. So it's a vision. Everything starts with vision and creates vision.
But like what makes you pull the trigger on like, I mean, is this the challenge of converting this to some sort of a profitability, or it's just the challenge of just getting it under contract and doing something with it? Like, what motivates you?
Well, so the excitement of doing the project, but you got to make money. All right. So I'm not doing this for practice. I've been at it 51 years. So it needs to be profitable. And from a development standpoint, I need to have a 30% margin. So I can quickly evaluate a property of whether or not it's even going to be worth my time looking at. So just over the years, I have experience and I already know, just looking at a piece of land, what the cost of the land is, or the building, what the building is. I've done so many different things. I can look pretty quick and know, there's potential here or there's not. If they want $2 million an acre where the land needs to be $500,000, I don't even mess with it, right? But if it's close and the beginning metrics are there and I know there's a profit potential, then I'll dig in a little deeper. But you can't do stuff for fun. What I do for fun is nonprofit community organizations, things like that. That's where I fill that gap. But when you're doing business, you got to make money. And,
sure.
And it just doesn't make any sense. So that's what drives that.
Okay. So on this, let just for fun on this acquisition, would you try to do a no money down deal? Do you have specific banks? Do you have like an acquisition bank? How would you fund this? Or tell us about what we're going to do with this Sears building opportunity.
Yeah, so this building's owned by a national REIT, so there would not be an owner finance opportunity. The REITs can't do that, so it's going to be either a land lease play, long-term lease, master lease play, or it's an outright purchase. So my first, and I've already approached them. My first approach was, are you willing to lease and or sell? Because generally they want to lease their properties. Now this one's been dropped into a lower tier in their portfolio, and they may just let it go, and it might go back to the lender. Where the entire mall goes back to the lender. So it could be an entire redevelopment opportunity. Right now, I'm just looking at a piece of it. So I've already approached them, already talked to them. And my conversation was, are you willing to sell and or lease the property? So they're still in the early stages right now. Let's say they want to sell it. So if they want to sell it, it's a big property. It's a big play. So, this will be a joint venture with an equity fund that will come in and provide the equity. And then we'll have a debt, senior debt component of it as well. So that's a huge project. If it's just a smaller piece, then, it'll be me and some local investors, friends that I have that are looking to do some deals that, will go in it with me, as long as the numbers make sense. Right. So that's the key. It's got to make sense.
Would you be like the sponsor? Would you do a PPM and do the whole thing if it was the whole property? Would you orchestrate that as a lead?
No, it wouldn't be, it's too big for that kind of thing. This would be a straight up where I'd joint venture with another equity firm to put up the equity, and then we'd have a senior debt component, and then we would, develop the property. So that would not be a syndication. It's too big for that, and it's in a development scenario. It's that's not really how you work those types of deals. So that would be a little bit different. This would be a $100 million redevelopment, 100 to 300 million at the back end redevelopment project. So it's a little different kind of structure.
Have you considered like tax credits or opportunity zone, or have you communicated with the city? Can you get any kind of support on those angles?
Yeah, no, this particular property doesn't have any of those types of incentives. It's just a very hot piece of property that has significant upside. There are opportunity zones in this area, but this one it's actually right across the street. The opportunity zone is. So now this is different. It wouldn't need to be. It's just such a great property, and it has so much potential that those factors don't even come into play. It's a suburban shopping mall that it has a Belk and it has a JCPenney and Sears. It was a great mall, but it's just fallen into disrepair, and they haven't done anything with it. So it's going to be a redevelopment play, and it's right in the heart of an area where there's huge demand for mixed use residential, a lot of multifamily going on, and there's other shopping centers that have been built that have taken traffic away from this. It's an indoor mall. It's an old school indoor mall.
Who is the management of the mall?
It is owned by I should try to remember the name.
Simon? Is it Simon?
Yeah, it's a Simon property. Yes.
Okay. And what would your what would your vision be on this property? Would you turn it into mixed use? Would you turn it into condo? What was your plan?
Yeah, so we are a little overbaked in retail and office right now. So yeah, I think it would be a mixed use residential, maybe a little small commercial, but you got everything right across the street. So to me, mixed use residential is what this property needs to be. So you'd have a little bit of condo, a little bit of apartment, and then some single families, maybe even just single family, because there's a lack of that in this area that this is at. It's in a great area where there's not much single family around, but there are townhouse, condo, things like that. So it's, to me, the highest and best use is residential. There's too much commercial already. There's a lot of vacancy in the area, and there's other retail corridors that are very strong that that you just don't want to try to compete with.
Would you try to what anchor would you put in there to really spice it up and get the demand?
Well, like I said, it'd be residential, so I wouldn't be looking for that. So this would not be a retail or yeah.
All right. So you mentioned earlier that you have your sites maybe doing a hotel development. What do you see in your future? You have reached everything that everybody wants to reach. People want to be you. You have a net worth. You live your dream. What's it look like for you in the future?
So, right now I'm on the path of really, doing fewer projects, bigger projects, developing people, helping other people, just kind of taking my 23 years of experience and expertise and, coaching and building and helping others scale their business, do bigger deals, take their investing business to the next level. I'm always looking for companies that have the ability to scale. So at 51, I'm kind of taking it easy in terms of the risk that I take. The older I get, the less risk I want to take. So I provide intellectual capital into the deals, my expertise. So I no longer invest my own money. I don't have to. I've got people that come to me every day wanting to invest in projects I'm doing. So, if you want to call it licensing, so I contribute my expertise, my ability to find deals, put stuff together. I mean, I get up and leave the house every day. I work out of my house. I'm on the road every day, looking at deals, meeting with people, constantly. I get young people. I live in Virginia, where the University of Virginia is in Charlottesville, just outside of DC. We've got one of the top business schools in the country here, Darden University, or Darden School of Business. And I get a lot of young people that come out of there that, ask for advice. Hey, what should I do with my career? I get some that are saying, hey, should I go to Darden? Should I do this? So, I love coaching and mentoring young people all the way up. And so I'm really focused on that and doing more of that and reaching more people with that internationally. I had a podcast yesterday with a guy in Ireland that's trying to build his investing business in Ireland and do multifamily deals in, Europe. So
Cool.
that really excites me. That's something I've wanted to do my entire life, because I learned from those people. I learned from the Zig Ziglars and the Tony Robbins and the Gary Vaynerchuks and, people like that over my career. I've studied, learned. So I want to take what I've been able to do, including what I learned from them, and give back. So that's what it looks like to me, continuing to do fewer, bigger deals, put together really cool, really creative projects where I'm not at risk. But I can be the creative, the visionary, and then help build other people, other companies, and other teams like that.
Awesome. Well, do you speak at all? Do you like to do presentations?
I am more of like a fireside chat kind of guy. So I'm a good Q&A interactive kind of a speaker. I'm not somebody that gets up and just gives a presentation. I get on a roll, as you see. But the stuff that I do, yes, I do speak in front of groups. I've spoken at some real estate masterminds and things like that. But it hasn't been, here's this presentation, I have this thing. I kind of just get up, introduce myself, tell my story, and just let it flow.
Sure.
And, so that's kind of what I've done and what I do. And I don't travel all over the country doing it. It's mostly locally and regionally and, things like that. It's just, I just haven't gotten there yet. So I don't know what that's going to look like. Maybe down the road, that's something I'll do more of.
Yeah.
But right now it's been kind of limited.
Just curious. We host a couple events. We do this thing called investorweekend.com, which is in Oklahoma City and Chattanooga. And then we do some other events around the country. So I was just curious, maybe we can invite you. You mentioned earlier some books. Rich Dad Poor Dad, obviously a staple for a lot of people, especially people that just starting out. Is there any books? I know that you're really big on scaling, which would be our next subject when you come back on the show. But any books that you really turned you on? Like one book really motivated me recently was called Rocket Fuel. I'm assuming that you've read that book about a visionary and integrator. But Are there any books that have really motivated you or that's on top of mind?
Yeah, so I mentioned all the authors of the, success, sales, motivation, all that. So all of those, and some of the old school books. So the way I grew and scaled my companies, my management philosophy and the culture of my companies, and even today, was the 1 Minute Manager. So there's a series of books in the 1 Minute Manager series that I learned early on in my career back in the late 80s, early 90s at a restaurant organization. And I've carried that forward with me. So it was there's a book called The New 1 Minute Manager. It's an updated version. Putting the 1 Minute Manager to Work is the second book. Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager is the third. That's all by Ken Blanchard and Spencer Tracy. And then there's several other books like Who Moved My Cheese and Whale Done. And so there's a number of books by those guys. But those
Raving Fan.
Right. But those three books are what I use and what I teach everybody else to learn and use and implement in their companies. And that is a unbelievable management philosophy and culture, or book. So those are cool. There was another book by Harold Janine, who was the CEO of ITT, called Managing. Very old school book, but it's an unbelievable book about scaling large companies and having, multi-conglomerate, multi-international business and how to run something like that. Unbelievable book, Managing by Harold Janine. And then one of the most recent books that I find really fascinating is Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray's a hedge fund manager. That's a really good one. And then here's a good one for you. Nobody knows this guy, Harry Edelson. Okay, Harry Edelson wrote a book called Positivity. And Harry Edelson is, at one time, he's in his 80s now. At one time, he's one of the most quoted guys on Wall Street. He has created 12 unicorns. He's on his 13th. And in venture capital, a unicorn is a company that's either sold at or valued at $1 billion minimum or more. He's done 12. That's unheard of. Nobody does that. And now he's on his 13th. And he wrote this book called Positivity. Really short book, unbelievable, philosophy of satisfaction, happiness, mindset in life. So those are some books. I mean, and there's hundreds of others.
Sure.
You know, I've read
No, that's good, man. So that's
I've read,
you wearing me out here, homie.
All of them.
That's good. We're gonna start there. Let me read those so I can call you back. All right, man. We're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
How could
23 years, man? I've been,
Greg? Again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, reach out to Greg Dickerson, which is www.GregDickerson.com. Friendly guy, very driven. So, like, if you call or contact this guy, there's no shame in his game. Get to the point, right? Ask the question, and he's willing to serve and help. Is there another way you want to? Is there an email or a phone number? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's all on my website. My phone number, 434-326-3903. I do answer the phone. People are surprised, but, hey, that's what I do.
Well, you were surprised that I replied right back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's success. I mean, people ask me all the time, how'd you do this? I just picked up the phone and called somebody. How'd you get on tour? And that's exactly how Greg and I connected. We just like-minded. Yeah. Hey, let's just do this. I don't even barely know him, but now I know him. Now I want to get to know him, and I hope that you guys will do the same. Hey, Greg, I really appreciate this. Last thought, anything else you want to say before we dismiss?
I guess the biggest takeaway is, and when I think about my career, it's mindset, right? So the belief in yourself that you can do what it is you want to do. And that's how success proceeds. It's an idea, it's faith in it, and then the means to implement it. That's how you create success. That's how you do something. So I started from nothing with nothing. And I haven't done, there's Warren Buffett's and Donald Trump's and Sam Zell's. I'm nowhere near that. But for a guy like me that didn't go to college, I did all that because I educated myself, I took action, and I believed in what I could do. Of course, I have a strong faith in God, and he's gifted me, and, I'm using those gifts to their fullest. But, just believe, have faith, and you can make it happen. That's my message.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. Good luck with the Sears building, and we'll follow up with the acquisition. Thanks for your time.
What is the Savvy Boot Camp? Are you struggling to get to the next level as a business owner, as an investor? Do you want to multiply your income? Sign up for the Savvy Boot Camp, a strategic and supercharged one-night and one-day event designed to shortcut your learning process and propel you forward. Just value, no upsells, and an intimate setting to build relationships with like-minded investors. We will be covering how personality profiling can make you a millionaire, outsourcing and the nitty-gritty of maximizing your property management, scaling your business through systems and automation, technology hacks you should be using every day, and how to raise private money. Go to www.savvybootcamp.com now to register or to find out more.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter @LandlordBook and always be buying assets.